We've got Kevin Tofel to talk about Amazon's Kindle and Adobe Flash on the bottom line.
Save time and money by skipping business trips and using GoToMeeting. Visit gotomeeting.com/techpodcast and get 30 days for free.
News is floating around that Amazon is looking to revise the Kindle's browser. I've gotten to use the Kindle browser and it's unspectacular, to say the least. Kevin, do you think that the Kindle could be a good web browsing device with the right browser?
Well, first, I think you're being generous when you say unspectacular. Could it be? I think it's kind of limited, and that's because you have to remember the Kindle was designed, over 2 years ago. It's currently using a Freescale processor that's at least a generation old in terms of ARM CPUs. And the killer, I think, is the e-ink display. It's awesome for text. But the page refresh, when you don't measure in frames per second, but actually seconds per page, that's not a good thing. I can't see with the fluent web how that's going to really work, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this because, the iPhone seemed like an interesting idea, and you could take a full page and shrink it, but then people started making pages just for the iPhone. Do you think there could be like a Kindle optimized web that people aren't taking advantage of? Should there be like an e-ink specialized version of the internet?
It's a great question, but my personal opinion is no. I wasn't even a fan of the mobile-friendly / iPhone-friendly websites. There's really only one internet, and when we start dividing it into these device-specific webs, that's really not a good thing, I think, in general for consumers, and it causes a headache for developers. It's more work than I think it needs to be. I think what's going on here is you've got Amazon saying, wow, 2010 is going to be the year of the Slate tablet. We have a Slate, sort of. How can we compete with this iPad or HP Slate? Let's beef up our browsing. That's my take on this.
Yeah, going over to Slates, computers have changed a lot. People are using them for consumption mostly. Do you think that any device these days has to run Flash to succeed? I mean, obviously the Kindle can't do it unless you want to look at, 1 frame a second, maybe, if you're lucky. I mean, does every device need Flash to succeed, or is this some kind of lumbering dinosaur that's still around that we just have to deal with?
Well, obviously it's going to depend on who you ask. There's pros and cons on the Flash, for Flash, against Flash, HTML5. But to be honest, I think there's at least 50 million reasons that Flash does not need to exist, and they're called the iPhone. It has never run Flash. It probably never will run Flash. Part of that could be politics with Apple wanting to control things, and I can certainly understand that. By controlling the experience, they're actually almost guaranteeing the type of experience that they want their users to have. On the flip side, Adobe wants to continue on with what they're doing today, which is being on 75–80% of all websites. It's really kind of interesting. I tend to think that Flash will obviously continue, and it will coexist with the HTML5 standards, but the key word is standards. I think we're going to see more people leaving Flash in favor of something standard as opposed to something a company controls.
Yeah, HTML5 is supposed to make video as easy as putting an image tag into a post. Like, could you imagine that if we had to write a giant embed code every time we want to put up a picture or even text? I mean, that seems ridiculous. Go ahead.
We do that now. I do that every day when I'm trying to embed, say, a YouTube video, and from a content publisher standpoint, it's a real pain.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of just looking at the amount of code that it takes to put in a video compared to HTML5. It's just really bulky. Now, Adobe's got a video out showing off Flash video running on the HP Slate. The HP Slate was that Slate computer that Microsoft showed off at CES. Now, in Adobe's video, the Flash video runs really smoothly on the Slate. Now, do you think this performance was real, or do you think this is some kind of doctored, Adobe-biased video?
I probably wouldn't say doctored, but I would say optimized. I mean, you're going to put your product out there in the best possible light. That's standard business practice. I don't think that's anything underhanded. But what's interesting, and if you listen to the video, there's one little tidbit where they say that in the hardware that there's hardware acceleration for graphics performance. So that's telling me a little bit about what's inside the HP Slate, which hasn't officially been announced. We don't know the specs, but you could guess it's basically a netbook type spec with the addition probably of a Broadcom HD accelerator, which will actually help Flash video.
One of the weird things is that people keep talking about Slate devices. They don't run Flash very well. And you can buy a netbook for the same price. But I've played with netbooks. They don't really run Flash well either. So what do you think? Should a device run Flash poorly, and so that way it can still say it runs Flash? Or should it be like, look, we can't do this. It's going to ruin the device, and just actually drop it? Which way would you go? Some Flash that stinks, or no Flash at all?
That's a real tough call, and I'm glad that I'm not in charge of a company that has to make that decision, because it comes down to that experience. You want to give your customers choices, because maybe some people are happy with say crappy flash performance over no flash performance, but yet people are going to talk and say, well, that device runs flash really crappy, don't buy it. That's a tough call. I would err on the side of caution and say we're not going to put a product out there until it meets our expectations.
Hey, Kevin, you're a UMPC user for a long time now, right?
Absolutely, got one right here.
So do you think that Slates, are they the next evolution, or are they going to stay the way of the UMPC that people just kind of forgot about them and kind of left them for dead?
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because the HP Slate looks like the UMPCs we wanted back in 2006, not these kind of bulky devices. But essentially, this is what the HP Slate is going to be, I expect, just at the next iteration of a UMPC. And I think the problem that I have that's continued to plague this sector, Microsoft continues to try to cram a desktop operating system into a mobile device. That's totally different than what we see with Android slates or mids or the iPhone or the iPad. They built from the ground up with finger-friendly and mobile in mind, and I'm not seeing that with the UMPCs.
So do you think the difference that this would make, do you need like a shell on top of Windows 7, or should they be using Windows Phone 7 to make these devices more, I guess, finger-friendly or small screen friendly? I mean, desktop experiences are usually optimized for these very large screens and for these very precise pointers, but when you move to a finger input, things kind of change. Right. Where do you think the operating system should be on devices like this?
I don't see Windows 7 as offering, that type of experience that I'd personally be looking for. I had it before with Windows XP, then Windows Vista, then Windows 7 on this very same device. It's not the same to take a desktop OS and try and finger-friendly it down. It's better, I think, to build an interface from the ground up. And I just don't see the need for all of that clunkiness of a desktop OS that's built for a keyboard and a mouse. I just don't.
Well, maybe Microsoft can introduce something like the Media Center PC. That Media Center software, if you guys don't know about it, is it's a 10-foot interface for Windows. So if you want to actually use it as a DVR, it's a fantastically large interface. You can see it from very far away, and it doesn't seem like a computer. It seems more like a DVR. Maybe do you think that's the happy medium, just like a shell, or?
It's a good point, but I think you're looking at something different here. It's a great example, but Windows Media Center, as you said, it's a 10-foot interface, and you've got more, I don't want to say room, but I can't think of anything better to say, more room to work with. Here you're very limited, and we've seen 2 shells already for UMPCs, the Origami Experience version 1 and version 2, that sat atop Windows. And it was okay, but again, you still had Windows, and you're very limited in the shell. So I do think that maybe Windows Phone 7 would be a better answer.
I guess we'll have to see when that comes out and see if it's the best option to go. Kevin Tofel, thank you for being on. You can find Kevin's work at jkOnTheRun.com. I'm Ayaz Akhtar, and thanks for watching.